Chantel Bellingham was born 3 months early, weighed just over 3 pounds, and addicted to methadone and possibly other opiates. She fought substance use and mental illness most of her life. Chantal is with me today to talk about her experiences growing up. And in another episode, we'll talk about how she is using that experience to help others as a peer support worker. Chantel, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Your story is starting with being born prematurely with methadone addiction and possibly other opiates. So let's just start with that and the
Yeah.
beginning of your life.
Okay. So I was born in Scarborough. I was born it was about 3 months premature. So I was born at like the 5 month or so mark. And I was born addicted to, I believe, methadone. And I'm not sure about the other substances, but that's why I had such a low birth weight. I was born at 2.5 pounds, and kept in the hospital for like up until my full term date. And then my biological mom realized she couldn't take care of me and decided to put me up for adoption, um, which I commend her for. Obviously, I was put into foster care, and I was in foster care until I was about 1.5 when my parents adopted me. And I went to an absolutely amazing family, and I had a great upbringing and whatnot. But I feel like the very early stages of my life would come back around years later, um, when I started to struggle with addiction on my own, despite the fact that I had a wonderful upbringing from 18 months onwards. So it still came back around. Anyways, and um, yeah, so I think that like it definitely played a role in where I ended up in my life. Um, but I'm thankful that my biological mom made the decision that she did, and that I did have such a great childhood because of that. And I can only imagine how hard that would have been for her. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I can I do think I well as well when we talked about your story before, I did think that a mother, any mother having to make that decision is so difficult. Can we just talk a little bit about methadone and how it works? I think a lot of people don't quite understand how methadone works. And I know that you work as a peer support worker with people who use substances and with mental illness. But methadone is, I think we all know, if we know about methadone, that it's used to help people withdraw from opiates
Mhm.
and be able to, get away from their substance use. But
Yes.
so it is sort of weird to think of it as something you can be addicted to as well.
Yes, so it's kind of a double-edged sword, and I feel like it gets a bad name a lot. But methadone was a huge part of my recovery, or like early recovery, anyways. But yeah, so methadone is an opiate, but it takes away like the really high highs and the really low lows. It keeps you stable, as long as you're taking it as prescribed by your doctor, and it takes away the physical withdrawal symptoms. There's also other medications you can use as well for like cravings and things like that. But I use methadone for like the physical withdrawal effects that I was going through, and it would make it so that I could get my life together. Because in the very beginning, when you're going through all those withdrawal symptoms, you can't think of anything but what your body is going through, and methadone was able to alleviate that and give me the ability to, work on my mental health, to find a job, to find housing, to do those things. So I do believe methadone is a great tool to use in recovery. But yeah, it is also interesting to think about like things like pregnancy and what my biological mom would have gone through and the choices she would have had to make, because methadone is extremely, extremely hard to come off of. It's, I believe, one of the strongest opiates you can be on. It counteracts things like fentanyl withdrawal, right? So, and I've been through the methadone withdrawal and things like that as well, and it is excruciatingly painful, and actually not recommended by doctors to go through when you're pregnant. So I'm sure she had to make those choices, which would have been very hard. Um, but yeah, I do think methadone gets a bad name, but it is, I feel like, an amazing tool. And the reason I'm sober today is because of things like methadone. When I share my story, I talk about all the different paths of recovery. Like it wasn't just one specific thing that I used in my recovery. I used many, many, many different tools, many, many different paths and forms of recovery to get to where I am today. So I think it's really important to talk about things like methadone and Suboxone and the other medical assisted treatment that you can get. And I feel like it's also really important because then you also get connected to things like counseling as well through methadone clinics. Some of my biggest support systems were staff of methadone clinics. They were the people that I would go to for almost everything. I had two receptionists that I honestly were I contribute like some of my biggest support systems to them. I still talk to them to this day. So I do feel like methadone is really important in the recovery community and to not have the stigma that it does. So.
Well, I think it's interesting too because when and I don't know with your mom, but obviously your mom was trying. Um,
Mhm.
and it's interesting. This is a little bit of a sidebar, but it's interesting that a lot of people who go to methadone clinics to get off of opioids um, are not living on the street. And I think we need to be clear about that, that those people may, if they aren't able to get their addiction under control, may end up on the street. I don't know, but it often starts at home, and it can start with a prescription to a pain pill because you've had some surgery. And I always want to be clear about that with opioid use. So you were adopted at a year and a half, and you were adopted by a lovely family, you said.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so talk
So,
a little bit about growing up. Did you struggle with even at a young age with any kind of drug cravings, or had the methadone helped you get to the point where in your life it just wasn't part of your life?
okay, so like, are we talking like when I'm a baby, or are we talking about my like addiction?
Sorry, well, no. When you were a baby and when you were growing up.
Oh, okay. So I have no memory, no recollection. They wean you off in the hospital very quickly as the baby. I'm sure you've seen documentaries or programs where, they're giving the little baby morphine and whatnot, and they wean you off before they would ever release you to hospital. So I don't have any memory of that because I was obviously so young.
Pretty young, yeah, at that
Um,
time.
so no, I don't feel like there's any real like drug cravings. I feel like when I got into like middle school, high school, and you start experimenting with things, I feel like I was a little bit different. I couldn't just like stop. I always wanted to keep going and do more and party harder and like be the life of the party constantly, whereas other people could just, have a drink or two and stop. I'd want to finish the bottle. Like there was no medium for me, I feel like. Um, so I say a whole lot. But yeah, I feel like that might have been the difference for me. But growing up in my childhood, no, I don't feel like there's any cravings. I was really good at school, always achieved or always wanted to achieve high marks. I took piano, and I excelled at that. I feel like I was a pretty good child, so to speak, well rounded, participated in extracurricular activities, always got good grades. My teachers loved me. I didn't really have any problems growing up as a child. I feel like maybe I was a little hard on myself. Uh, my parents were, and I think, were a very loving, supportive home. They were sort of whatever I wanted to do, but I always wanted to be the best at everything. So that's like the only thing I can think of really from my early childhood. But yeah, getting into high school and or middle school and high school is where the problems started. Once you start introducing things like alcohol and weed, and I feel like that's kind of where things started to go downhill. And my parents got divorced around that time as well. So, and that was quite a big event in my teenage years. It's a very hard adjustment for my family to go from, this whole family to my parents separating. It was quite a hard divorce. My mom, there's four of us. All four of us are adopted. My mom then,
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah, I know. I brag about my mom to everybody. I say she's a
Yeah.
saint. She's wonderful. I love her so much. She's a wonderful woman. But all four of us have our own struggles with different mental health and whatnot. So she's been the rock of our family, keeping us all together. But Yeah, so the four of us went with her, and we did struggle for a few years through that, and it was really hard on me. I'm the oldest of the four of us, so I feel like I took it the hardest. I could understand the most. I picked up on things that the younger kids didn't pick up on, things like that. So I feel like I really struggled through my teenage years with that and started to party harder. Was drinking all the time, didn't go to school unless I could smoke my weed first, those sort of things. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. So that's
Did
kind of my
opioids come back in to your life?
so
I
funny
mean,
enough,
I'm not
no.
downplaying like drinking and weed, because I
Yeah,
know that in talking to previous people and medical professionals that weed can be the gateway to mental illness. Like, I mean,
yeah.
excessive weed use
Oh,
is linked
definitely.
to schizophrenia, for example.
Yep.
So it's not like, oh yeah, I smoked a few joints. But did
Yeah.
opioids come into your life at all again?
So not in high school. So I was able to get by and pass high school. My grades slipped a lot in grade 10, 11, and then I kind of sort of picked it back up in grade 12. I think my teachers just felt bad and passed me in grade 10, to be quite honest. So I was never at school and I was skipping school constantly and drinking and smoking weed and whatnot. But I got myself together by my final year. And then I always, since I was about 12 years old, my favorite show was Intervention, which I feel like should have been a red flag, but that was my favorite show.
Well, later when we
And
talk in a few minutes, it's kind of a little bit where you got to, but in a different way.
so that was my dream job. I was like, I want to be an addictions counselor or an interventionist. Like, I want to go do that. I always had a fascination with psychology and pharmacology and drugs, so to speak, because of my like biological family and kind of my story there. So I wanted to be an addictions counselor. So in my grade 12 year, I decided I'm going to go off to college. I didn't have the grades for university because of my kind of dip in grades in grade 10 and 11. But so I applied to my social service worker program at Durham College and I got accepted and I went off to Durham College. So I did all my schooling in Durham region. I went to Ajax High School and then I went to Durham College in Oshawa and I was accepted. My first semester or so went really well. My second semester, I kind of started partying, so I had met people and whatnot. And then I got myself into a relationship with someone who also struggled with substances and mental health. I had kind of picked up doing a few party drugs, so to speak. I don't know how graphic I'm going to get into, but like doing lines at the bar and things like that. Again, not minimizing that, but that's kind of what I was doing. Met some people that were doing like hydrocodone or like popping pain pills and stuff like that. But for them, they could do that on the weekends and then go back and be normal at school or work or whatever. So I start doing this and I have the addiction gene, so to speak, and I can't just stop. And it was very quick. The first time I took a hydro, I knew right away. I went, oh no, this is going to be a problem. As soon as I took it and it hit, I was like, uh-oh, what have I done? I could feel that no one should feel this good. And I think this is going to be a problem. And it was every day after that, I wanted to go get
Well,
it.
it
And
probably activated your addiction, right? What you were born
A
with.
100%. I remember turning to the partner that I was with at the time, and I went, "Oh no, we're in trouble. Like I'm gonna want this all the time." And that's exactly what happened. And things just spiraled out of control. So it went from doing lines at the bar. I took a hydro once, and I was hooked. I was ready to go do whatever, get them. How am I gonna get them? I was working at the time. I was working at a Tim Hortons, and I was going to school. And so I'm doing that. I when I tell my story, I still to this day do not know, I guess by the grace of God, creator, whoever was watching down on me, I don't know how I got my social services diploma. I do not know how I graduated because my addiction spun out of control very, very fast. I was living with my mom at the time and unfortunately she had to implement boundaries. What are you doing? She could tell something was going on. I don't think she knew to what extent. But she was like, this person that you're with, like I don't agree with this. Like you got to make a choice here. Either you live at home and you tone down your partying and you go to school and do what you're supposed to do, or you need to leave my house. She also has three younger kids. I'm now a danger, really. And of course, I think 18 or 19 at the time. I think I know everything. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm fine. I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna show you. I, yeah, well, the real world doesn't work that way. I leave, and I was couch surfing, sleeping in cars, my whole last semester or so of college. Or sorry, my third, I would have been the second last semester of college. So I'm out doing the most couch surfing and all that. And thankfully, my school was nice enough to help me because I finally went to them and was like, I don't want to drop out of school. I want my diploma, but I'm pretty much homeless and I don't know where to go or what to do. So they were able to get me housing in, they put me up in residence for a couple weeks and then they signed off on my first apartment, which was right next to the college. And this was like the worst decision I ever made. I knew someone that dealt drugs out of that apartment. So what unit did I request when
The
I
one right beside the person?
no, that unit. I was
Oh,
like,
that
let me
you,
move
oh,
in.
oh,
Oh,
you're so if the person became your roommate,
oh yeah, yeah. So now I have a
not
lot
a
of
good decision.
live-in substances and you know what I mean? So and my school signed off on my apartment and I feel so bad about that now because they were so good to me. And then, of course, things just spun out of control. I had pretty much unlimited access to substances. And then, you know, I ended up losing my job at Tim Hortons because I'm falling asleep, standing up, trying to make coffee. Everyone can tell there's something wrong. And I did end up losing my job at Tim Hortons. And then, of course, uh, I eventually end up losing that apartment and I go from place to place to place. But I did have a partner, like I said, who also he's a lot older than me and he struggled with it. He had his own struggles with mental health and addiction. So I feel like our relationship became very toxically codependent. We did not do anything without each other. We were tied at the hip. So now you also have not only do I have my own addiction, but I have an addiction to a person. Like we could not separate. There was no that wasn't even a question to us. We were always together. And then you have two people battling mental health and addiction at the same time, which I feel like makes things really complicated. Um, and that went for quite a long time. And I tried, you know, we tried moving different places, but we always ended up back using. So I did have periods of time, probably 3, 4, 5 months at a time where I would um, stay sober, so to speak, but nothing that ever really stuck. And I used methadone. I remember my first trip to a methadone clinic as well. One of the girls that lived in the apartment, it was a 5 bedroom apartment, by the way, for college. So it was just a party central. There was always something going on, always people. And I remember her saying to me, like, you need to go to a methadone clinic. What are you doing? And I was really young, hanging out with people that were way, way older than me. So she took me and I do thank her for that because I don't think I ever would have gone alone. I would have been too scared. And but yeah, so I used methadone a lot um throughout my addiction as well, like to counteract when I didn't have substances. So I used that for quite a while. I'm no longer on methadone, but that's another part of my story. Um, but yeah, I would say my college years is where everything really went downhill, and I went from 0 to 100. There was no medium. I'm very much an all or nothing with black or white. Like it just went spun right out of
I think that
control.
that's I think that that's very typical of people who are it's on both sides because you had mental health issues as well, and the all or
Mhm,
nothing is
mhm.
really really common in people who I think it's you get to the feeling from the feeling of helplessness to the feeling of euphoria when and
Yep,
there's no middle. You just go,
yep, no, no. And I also feel like I do have uh I shouldn't say severe, but I have ADHD. Like talk to me for 10 minutes, you'll figure it out. So I feel like with the cocaine, I remember doing like cocaine and being like, I don't know why anybody does this. I was so confused. And then someone told me, well, you must have ADHD because it'll like it's a stimulant, calms you down. So I did get a diagnosis for ADHD when I was 19 and given a stimulant prescription, which also was not a good idea in the middle of my addiction. I didn't take them for very long before I ended up doing things with them. But yeah, I feel like that also played a big part in why I liked substances so much, because it calmed my brain down. My brain goes at 100 miles a minute all day, every day. Now I say my ADHD is a superpower because I do so much at the same time, and I enjoy like having healthy chaos is what I call it. But back then I just wanted my mind to be quiet, and I think that's why I was so drawn to substances, because I had so much going on in my head that I just couldn't shut off. So I feel like, yeah, mental health was definitely hand in hand with addiction.
I think we're going to have a second interview, Chantel, because we never got to the work that you've done as a peer support and how you got there. Because we needed to talk about your story, and it's and
Mhm.
when we talked last week and for quite a while, but there's a lot more information that's come forward
Mhm.
with you and turning that into a peer support worker. But you also work on housing, and you're back at school,
Yeah.
and well, there, I mean, if I just mention that, I can see how focused you are in doing things. So
Mhm.
we are actually out of time now. So
We actually, I did not think that was 25 minutes. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I
no, no,
really
no,
should have
no,
written
no,
stuff
no.
out.
And I'm going to say that it's excellent. And people don't want to come on often and talk about their lived experience, but to know that you went through a life where you're in a very stable family and you went through school and so on, but
Mhm.
even with all of that support,
Mhm.
you ended up because you went to a party and something happened there.
Yeah.
So, but I do want to talk to you again about your work as a peer support worker, because
Nice.
that's actually how we sort of connected. So
Yeah.
let's do that. I really appreciate you talking to me today, and we are going to set up a time to talk about the new part of your life.
Yes, perfect. Yes. I do think talking about my lived experience is really important with the stigma that goes around with addiction and mental health. So thank you so much for letting me share that. And especially like other than the event that you kind of met me through, this has been like my first time publicly sharing all of that. So going into detail about it.
We'll talk soon. Chantel Bellingham will be back on the show to talk about how she is using her experiences to become a peer support worker, helping others who are battling mental illness and substance use. It's no surprise that peer to peer connections are proving to be one of the most effective ways of helping people with mental illness, especially given the stigma people face and the help they need to navigate the health system and the difficulty in finding housing. You can listen to all episodes of Life Unscripted, Stories of Mental Health and Addiction, on your favorite podcast app or on my website at lifeunscripted.ca.